So, hello there, and welcome back to yet another Night to the Movies podcast. And in these podcasts, I talk all things movies and TV, and whatever I want, whenever I want. And in today's podcast, as somebody who is not a fan of the Hunger Games franchise whatsoever, I'm reviewing The Hunger Games, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. But, just before I do that, I should say what I say at the start of every podcast I do, which is, if you are watching this podcast on YouTube, hello to my viewers, but if you prefer to listen to your podcast on Spotify, well, you're in luck, as you can also listen to this podcast on Spotify at Night the Movies on that platform, and if you are already listening to this podcast on Spotify, hello there to podcast listeners, then you can also watch this podcast on YouTube at Night the Movies on that platform as well. Likewise, whatever you may be watching or listening to this podcast, don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoy the podcast, of course, and please leave me with some feedback on things to improve on in future podcasts, because there's always things to improve on, and feedback is, as ever, much appreciated. So, let's get into it, shall we? The Hunger Games, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. What an awful title. But anyway, if you hadn't guessed already, this is the new Hunger Games film, and it's directed by Francis Lawrence, who I'm pretty sure directed all the previous Hunger Games movies from about 10 years ago now. And as I've already sort of alluded to, I am not a fan of the Hunger Games franchise whatsoever. I've never read any of the Hunger Games books, surprise, surprise, because I don't read a lot anyway, and I've never really seen any of the Hunger Games films. Well, I did watch the first Hunger Games film, actually. I watched the first Hunger Games film about 10 years ago. At least it feels like 10 years ago now. And I don't remember liking it too much. I don't remember hating it either, but I don't remember having this great affection for it. I remember watching it, enjoying part, and then when it ended, walking away from it and forgetting it pretty much 5 minutes after. So I don't really know much about this franchise whatsoever. I've seen about 5 minutes of the second Hunger Games film. What's it called? Catching Fire. You know, I was flicking through TV one night about 5 years ago now, or a good couple of years ago now, whatever. I was flicking through TV one night and I caught about 5 minutes of the film, and then I changed the channel because it just wasn't interesting me that much, because I didn't really know what was going on, and the Hunger Games films have never really appealed to me. You know, I'm not saying they're bad, and I understand they have this huge fan base, which I'm glad they do, but at the same time, though, I'm not gonna lie when I say that I would one day really want to watch a Hunger Games film, because I've had many, and I mean many, chances to watch these films over time. People in my family are fans of them, and, you know, they have rewatched them whilst I've been free and whilst I've been given the chance to check them out, and I've never wanted to because they haven't appealed to me and they just don't look like my sort of films. That being said, I was interested in this new Hunger Games film though, for one big reason: the trailers. The trailers for this film looked fantastic, because even though, as I've already said, I am not a fan of the Hunger Games franchise whatsoever, I watched the trailers and the production quality, the story, and the cast had me interested in seeing this film. I remember watching that first trailer and going, oh, they actually look like they're trying for this film. They actually look like they're trying to get people back interested and excited for this franchise once again. Because when I know it hasn't been around for like 7 or 8 years. When was the last Hunger Games film? I was like 2015, I'm not even sure, because that shows you how interested and how much I know about this franchise. So you get the point I'm making. You know, the trailers looked really, really good, and they had this great cast on screen. You know, you had Rachel Zegler in there, who was sensational, and I mean sensational, in Steven Spielberg's West Side Story, which came out in 2021, and not enough people saw in the cinema. That film was absolutely incredible, and she played Maria in that, which is a difficult role to play, and she owns it. Her singing in that film is remarkable. It's on another level. And this film also stars Peter Dinklage, who, in my opinion, played the best character in Game of Thrones, which was Tyrion, and I think a lot of the reason I love that character so much is down to Peter Dinklage's performance. I think he was just absolutely magnificent in Game of Thrones. I think he was just... Yeah, I think he was the best character, and I also think he should have got the throne at the end, but he didn't. But that's another topic for another day. And yeah, when I saw he was in this film, I got even more excited. And then I saw Viola Davis, who was so good in The Woman King last year. And that got me more interested to see it, because when I saw that cast, I was like, wow, they're really going all out with this film. They're really trying to bring in this audience, trying to get this attraction going. And the cast got me interested, and the trailers got me a little excited, which is something I never, ever thought I'd say about a Hunger Games film. Honestly, if you told me a year ago that I would be looking forward to watching a Hunger Games film in the cinema, I would have laughed in your face. But here we are, it's 2023 and weirder things have happened, and I was actually looking forward to going and watching a Hunger Games film in the cinema yesterday. That was... that was quite a weird and strange experience, going into cinema and going, actually, this might be quite good. I'm actually looking forward to seeing what they're going to do. And yes, I got round to finally seeing it yesterday and being quite excited to do so. I mean, I'm not going to say I was quite excited, but I was a little excited. More excited than I really ever thought I would be for a Hunger Games film at all. Really, more excited than I thought I would be to watch a Hunger Games film whatsoever. And the Google plot synopsis of the film goes as follows. Years before he becomes a tyrannical president of Panem, 18-year-old Cornelius Snow remains the last hope for his fading lineage. With the 10th annual Hunger Games fast approaching, the young Snow becomes alarmed when he's assigned to mentor Lucy Gray from District 12. Uniting their instincts for showmanship and political savvy, they race against time to ultimately reveal who's a songbird and who's a snake. Not gonna lie, I got bored reading off that plot synopsis because, well, it doesn't sound that interesting me. But that being said, I was looking forward to this film. The trailers look great, I've said all that, so you get the point. I was looking forward to this film. And honestly, I thought it was fine. I didn't really like it that much. There is a lot to admire, though. There is a lot to admire. And when I say a lot to admire, there really is. The performances are all stellar. The aesthetic is great. The film is grounded in verisimilitude, and if you don't know what that word means, look it up. The film is grounded in verisimilitude. I love the production quality, it's clearly on screen. When I've heard the film had a $100 million budget, and you can tell the budget is on screen, and I love it when a film has a budget $100 million or higher, and you can tell. That's something I really admire about big budget movies, when they are big budget, and you can see the budget on screen, and you can see the budget on screen in this film. There's definitely some really enjoyable moments, particularly when the Hunger Games actually get going. There's some interesting character moments. I think the love story, the sense of this film between Snow and Lucy Gray works well to a degree, and yeah, there is a lot to like and a lot to really talk about positively. And I think the first half of the film is actually alright. I think it's good. I think the first half of the film was quite entertaining. Then you get to the second half of the film now, and it just goes on and on and on, and it becomes lifeless. And I hate to say it, because I love going to the cinema. I get so excited about it all the time. I mean, today I'm going to go watch Napoleon at the cinema. I am counting down the minutes till I go and do that, regardless of how good the film's going to be. But the point I'm making is, I love going to cinema. So I hate what I'm about to say. I could not wait to leave the cinema when I was watching this film because of how tedious I found it towards the end. It just was outstayed its welcome by a whole hour, in my opinion. The last section of the film is split into 3 sections, and if you've seen the film, you'll know what I mean and how that's done. You know, the film is split up into 3 sections, and then by the time you get to the third and final section, I was like, how long we got left? This, and it felt like it could have made a movie out of that. I'm not saying it would have been a good movie, but it could have made a movie out of the whole last act of the film, and I feel it could have been done in a more exciting and more absorbing way. I got that third act, and even though I liked the characters to start off with, even so I was quite in... I wouldn't say, actually. I was about to say I was quite invested in the love story. Even so I was ever so slightly invested in the main love story. By the time we got to the third act, it was like the film forgot what it wanted to be. It just became something that I wasn't expecting it to be, and yeah, I didn't really like what it was doing in that third act. I felt the film lost its way. I felt the film lost its way. And that's not to say, as I've already said before, that there weren't a lot of positives. Tom Blythe, who plays the protagonist of the film, who plays young Snow, does a really great job. And the casting is on point with him because, from what I've heard, he's meant to grow into Donald Sutherland. You know, Donald Sutherland plays Snow in the Hunger Games films that we had about 10 years ago now. You know, and you can see that Tom Blythe, he has a bit of a look of a young Donald Sutherland about him. You can see that when you're watching the film, and I think it gives off a great performance. I really think it's going to be one of those actors that you see in a lot more going forward after this, regardless of how well this film does box office and critically wise overall. When people look back in it, I really think they're going to go, Tom Blythe, he was perfectly cast and did a really fantastic job playing young Snow. And Rachel Ziegler, who for some stupid reason has become controversial recently because of her comments on a film. I mean, it's absolute, and pardon my French here, shit why people are making such a big deal over this. But whatever. You know, Rachel Ziegler, who I've already mentioned, was so great in West Side Story, and was enjoyable to watch in Shazam! Fury of the Gods earlier this year, although I'm going to admit she didn't have much to do. It was nice seeing her in something where she was given a more meatier role, and she sings in this film, and boy, can she sing! I mean, we saw that when she played Maria in West Side Story, but she is singing in a very different way in this film than she was in West Side Story, showing her, you know, vocal range and showing her acting range too. She gives off a really good performance that I was drawn to. I was drawn to her performance more than I was drawn to her character, which tells you how good of an actress Rachel Ziegler is, and I really can't wait to see what she does next. I think it's going to be great as Snow White, regardless of what some incels may be saying. And I really loved Peter Dinklage's film. Peter Dinklage is menacing, and every single time he's on screen, there's this dominance that comes on the screen with him. You know, he approaches every single line in this film like it's Shakespeare and like his life depends on it. And Viola Davis is clearly having a lot of fun playing this villainous role. She's chewing up scenery in a way where you can tell she's enjoying what she's doing. And Jason Schwartzman adds some comedic relief to the film where needed, and I think he's really well cast. And I love Jason Schwartzman in many Wes Anderson films. He's also great in Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, which is a very much underrated film in my opinion. That's a masterpiece, if I'm being honest. But anyway, yeah, I love Jason Schwartzman, and I loved him in this film. The cast do a really, really great job. And there is a lot to mind the aesthetic, and as I've already said, the set design, the costume design, something I don't usually talk about when it comes to films. That is really wonderful to look on screen, and you can see that this is a well-produced film. I was about to say it's well-directed. I don't actually think it is well-directed. I think parts of the film are well-directed, but I think overall the direction becomes a little sloppy towards the end, and I do actually think pacing-wise it's a bit of a mess, but there is a lot to be entertained by in the film, and the Hunger Games section of the film, the actual bit where people have to try and kill each other, you know, it's survival of the fittest and all that, that section of the film is entertaining. Although it could have been better. And the whole film could have been better. Going back onto the Hunger Games section for a sec. That section of the film should have been more visceral. It should have been more nail-biting sort of stuff. Because you're watching it, and again, it's not enjoyable to watch. But it doesn't have that same intensity and that same suspense that it could do, and that it should do, really. You know, I wanted to be sat on the edge of my seat watching that whole Hunger Games section of the film, and in actuality I was like, I don't care too much. I mean, it's entertaining what's going on, but this really doesn't have that same drive that it should do. And onto the love story, I was slightly invested in the love story, mainly because of the two actors, you know, Tom Blythe and Rachel Ziegler. but I feel that the love story could have been focused on more. I mean, it is focused on enough that you can clearly tell that's what they're trying to make the heart of the film, but it doesn't feel like the beating heart of the film, though. It doesn't feel like it's there. It's beating throughout all the film. It doesn't feel as focusing and as like the beating heart as it should be. If you follow my thing, I don't know how much it made sense there, but you get the point I'm making. It works to a degree, but it doesn't work as well as it could do. And I think a lot of the introduction and the exposition in this film about the Hunger Games and what it's all about and how they're trying to introduce new aspects to the Hunger Games is done in quite a stale and undercooked fashion. A lot of this film felt like it should have been more exciting. And I should say, you know, maybe I didn't like this film because I'm not a Hunger Games fan. That could very well be the case, because I am very sure, I bet you that there are thousands and thousands of Easter eggs towards the Hunger Games books and the previous Hunger Games films in this film that I wouldn't have noticed, because I'm not a Hunger Games fan. And I wonder if this film really sets up the first Hunger Games film really well. Maybe it does, and I see a lot of Hunger Games fans loving this film. And if you do love this film, that's great. And maybe I didn't like it because I am not a fan of the Hunger Games franchise whatsoever. However, I remember going to watch the Hobbit movies about, what was it, over 10 years ago now, all the way back in 2011, when I went to go watch the first Hobbit film in the cinema, and absolutely dreading it because I didn't remember much about the Lord of the Rings trilogy before I went to go and see the first Hobbit film, and I really thought it was going to drag on and on, and I thought I was going to absolutely detest the film, and I thought it was going to be, what was it, 2 hours and a half of my life I'd never get back. I ended up coming out of the cinema after watching the first Hobbit film, a prequel to the Lord of the Rings trilogy, and absolutely loving the film. And I felt the same about the second Hobbit film, the third Hobbit film. And I know the Hobbit films aren't for everybody, but I love them to pieces. I mean, they're not Lord of the Rings, but they are great films in my opinion. I was hoping the same would happen with this Hunger Games film, because it is a prequel. It is a prequel, and I was hoping I would come out of this film, much like I did with the Hobbit films, and I would want to go and check out the franchise that came before, you know what I mean? The films that came before. You know, to use a different example, to go off the Hobbit for a sec, I remember watching the third Fantastic Beasts film, yes, the third Fantastic Beasts film in the cinema, was about a year ago now. Yeah, it was actually only a year ago. It only came out last year. Wow, it feels like it came out much longer ago. But anyway, yeah, I remember watching that third Fantastic Beasts film, you know, The Secrets of Dumbledore in the cinema. And I don't remember a thing about the Harry Potter films, really. Even now, because I haven't rewatched them. I'm going to rewatch them this Christmas. I don't remember a thing about them. And I remember going and watching that third Fantastic Beasts from the cinema, not really having much expectations. And even though I didn't love that film, and even though I didn't think it was great or anything, I remember enjoying it far more than I really expected to. And again, that's a prequel. And I didn't really enjoy the first two Fantastic Beasts films. So I had, maybe it's because my expectations were so low, but at the same time, I came out of the third Fantastic Beasts film after watching the cinema, and I had a bit of a spring in my step. And I really want that to happen with this new Hunger Games film. I really wanted to come out of the cinema and have a bit of a spring in my step going, you know what, I'm going to go and check out the other Hunger Games films now with Jennifer Lawrence and Elizabeth Banks and Donald Sutherland and Woody Harrelson and all them famous actors. I want to go and check them out now, but in actuality, what happened was I came out the cinema and the opposite happened. I was like, yeah, I'm okay if I never ever watch another Hunger Games film. I mean, I probably will one day, but it's just not on my list of films. It's not on my watch list, you know? And this film put me off watching more Hunger Games films. And again, sure, it might be because I'm not a fan of the Hunger Games franchise whatsoever. But, as I've already said, I can watch prequels having not remembered much to nothing about the films that came beforehand and still end up really enjoying those films. if you follow my thinking. And that didn't happen with this film. And I really think that because the last couple of Hunger Games films were a good few years ago now, this film should have been really, aiming at introducing new audiences, and I'm not sure if it did that. This film should have been immersive, should have been absorbing, it should have been thrilling and exciting, and I never really felt that it was. There were some exciting moments, sure, but there were moments. They weren't sequences. They weren't sections of the film. And the film wasn't as immersive and absorbing as I hoped. I never really felt like I was immersed into this world of the Hunger Games, into this futuristic world. I never really felt immersed in it. And I was really wanting to feel that, and I never really felt too attached to any of the characters, so when certain things happened to these characters, I was just sat there going, yeah, okay. I just didn't really care that much, and I think that's really the thing about the film. I didn't care, and the film didn't really give me a reason to care. And again, a lot to admire, and one thing I haven't mentioned in talking about the positive stuff is the use of music in the film. There were so many moments when Rachel Ziegler sings that would, on paper, sound quite cringeworthy. There's one moment in particular where she sings to try and stop dying. Not to go into too much details in case people haven't seen the film, but she's about to die, and then she sings. And on paper, it sounds like it would be the most cheesiest thing in the world watching that in cinema. But actually, she makes it work, and the film makes that work. And a lot of musical sections in the film, which I actually quite liked. And James Newton Howard's score for the film works well with the film. Although I must admit, I was hoping it would be more evident with the film itself. Like there'd be moments when the score was really coming through and swelling through and really making me immerse into this world more, and it didn't really. And the thing is, I know James Newton Howard scores can do that because I just recently rewatched Peter Jackson's King Kong, and he did the score for that film. And say what you will about that film, personally I love it to pieces, but say what you will about that film, the musical score I think accentuates and brings to life so many moments because it swells through and it really immerses you into the world of Skull Island. And that's something James Newton Howard did so well with his score for King Kong, and you don't get that with his score here though. I don't think it's a bad score, but I think it could be so much better and so much more effective. I was let down by the score because I know James Newton Howard can be good, and that I'm not totally blaming him because a lot of that is also down to what the director wants from the composer. But still, it felt like there could have been more happening with the musical score. And as I already said, the budget is on screen. You can really tell that, and there is again a lot to like. Some of the other performances I haven't already mentioned yet. Hunter Schafer as Young Snow's sister. She works well in the film. She's really great. A lot of people might know from Euphoria. I haven't seen Euphoria really, so yeah. But she's really great in the film. And Jos Andres Rivera, apologies for mispronouncing his name, he was also in West Side Story alongside Rachel Ziegler. And from what I've heard, they are they're partners in real life. They're together in real life, so it's nice that they're still working together and still together in real life as well. And he's really great in the film. He doesn't have a huge role, but he has a memorable role, and again I think a lot of that is down to his performance. And as what he said, there is so many good performances in the film. I think all the main good performances actually are really great. Some of the other supporting performances from non-actors or from actors that are much lesser known than the actors that are shown on the poster of this film and whatnot. I think some of the last performances aren't great. I didn't totally believe in some of the performances during the Hunger Games stuff when they're all trying to kill each other. I didn't totally believe in some of the smaller and lesser supporting performances because I didn't feel the acting was always great there. But with the main cast, the acting works. But another big problem I have with this film is that it feels like 3 films in one. It feels like it's trying to tell 3 stories, and really it should have just focused on one. Actually, I can see where they would have made this a trilogy of films. I know the director's come out and said he didn't want to make this into 2 movies, but I honestly think it might have been better because the film feels both tedious and rushed at the same time, which is an odd mix, but you do get that with some films, and you get that here. You know, I've already mentioned, it feels like three films. It feels like a film about the rise to power of a man from nothing. And then it turns into a film about a man trying to hold his own when everything is against him. And then, in the final act of the film, in the final section of the film, it turns into a film about a doomed love story. It's three films in one. It's a film about a rise to power of a man. It's a film about a man trying to hold his own and add something to make it more exciting, add something to the Hunger Games and show how influential he was and all that. And then it's a film about a doomed love story. And by that point, by the time you get to the doomed love story, it just, again, I just didn't really care. I really wish that it was more thrilling and just more exciting and more engaging and more compelling to watch. It really wasn't. And the whole film feels messy. And the pacing is all over the place. There's some sequences which are, as what he said, well, some moments which are exciting. But then there are a lot of moments where it's like, let's live in this moment. I'm going, why? Why are we living in this moment? And why are we not living in that moment early in the film? That moment which felt like it was far more important than this moment. I don't know. It just wasn't for me. And I should reiterate, I'm not a Hunger Games fan, so maybe that's why. But I have watched prequels in the past before watching the movies that were made beforehand, and I've ended up really enjoying those films, and those films have made me want to go and watch the films that came before. But that didn't happen with the Hunger Games. In fact, the opposite happened. And I just felt that it was a lifeless prequel. I felt it could have been so much better. And I don't think it's awful. But I also don't think it's good either. I think it's just... that's what I think it is. It's just... disappointed about this one because the trailers are so good. But all in all, it is what it is. And so, all in all, I'm going to give the Hunger Games, the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, I'm going to give this film a 5 out of 10. The reason I give it a 5 out of 10 is that's what I give films that I just find to be fine. You know, I give films a 6 out of 10 or above. You know, I give films a 6 out of 10 if I've enjoyed them, a 7 out of 10 if I've actually quite enjoyed them, and then a 7.5 out of 10 if I saw the film, an 8 out of 10 or higher if I really, really enjoyed the film. I think the film's great. And so I'm giving the Hunger Games, the Ballad of whatever, a 5 out of 10 because I just find it to be fine. You know, it didn't annoy me, and I didn't hate the film, because hating the film would involve me getting emotionally engaged in the film, which is something I never really did. And as I was saying that, I hit my bike just there. But anyway, yeah, hating the film would require me to get emotionally involved, and I never really did. And I really wished and I did, and I cared about what was going on, because, again, a lot of potential, a lot of stuff to admire. But it's 2 hours and 37 minutes. Pardon me, I'm pretty sure it's around that length. It's a long film. It's over 2 hours and a half. And you feel that. You feel that length. And I'm not against long films at all. I'm really not. Just last week, watched Anatomy of a Fall. That was 2 hours and a half. And it did not feel that. This film did, though. This film... I would say it's welcomed by a whole hour, in my opinion, and it should be more tight. It should be more effective. It should be more thrilling. It should be more exciting. It should be more scary at times. It should be more suspenseful. And it has its moments, has its perks, but that's how I feel about the film. Yeah, it's a lifeless prequel, as I've titled this podcast today. And so, all in all, as I've already said, I'm going to say that the Hunger Games, the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, I'm going to say that it's a 5 out of 10 from me. Anyway, guys, that's it for the podcast today. Please let me know your thoughts on the Hunger Games, The Ballad of Songbirds Snakes. Maybe you loved the film, and if you did, that is great, and I'm jealous of you. I really wish I loved the film too, and if you did love the film, please let me know why in the comment section below. You never know, maybe you'll persuade me to actually give it another go. But yeah, whatever your thoughts are on this new Hunger Games film, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, which is an awful title, whatever your thoughts are on this film, please let me know in the comment section below. And if you haven't yet, please click down below and like, subscribe on this podcast. And as always, thank you for watching or listening to this podcast. And I suppose this is it. So I will see you guys again soon. But bye for now. Bye.